and sky's the limit. Obviously, you could be streaming on a website with Drake,
I don't know.
Le'Veon Bell.
I read this. I
No, it's congrats to him. I mean, that had to motivate somebody on that stream. But anyways, welcome to this week's episode. This is going to be episode 15 of the Film Planet podcast. We're going to be breaking down a couple of different movie reviews. He went and saw Strangers. We both saw Wrinkle Time, and I just got back from Gringo. And then there's a couple of tidbits that Jamal wanted to go over. He hasn't told me yet, so I'll be finding out with you guys. So I'm Nadal.
Jamal. He just said my name.
I didn't introduce your name though, but we'll go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead. Let's start with Strangers. Let's start with the movies that we saw individually. So Strangers, how was it?
It was a cool slasher flick. Kind of throwback to the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, not 90s, like 70s and 80s. Kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, Halloween. Kind of like in that realm. Decent slasher flick. I mean, that's all I had to say. The story is pretty basic. Family about to send their daughter to boarding school. She's frustrated, troubled youth. They try to do a getaway. That's when all hell breaks loose. And survival of the fittest at that point. So that's pretty much it. I get a rating go. It's not a theater thing, but it's definitely worth a watch on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I give it a 6.3 out of 10.
6.3 out of 10. Okay. I mean, it seemed weird. When I first saw the trailer, it looked like the first. Not the Purge. I don't even remember. It doesn't really matter. It looked. I don't want to say generic. I haven't seen it, but
the face is like the Purge.
Yeah. It just seemed kind of like rehashing this, kind of hitting on that. And then Gringo, I just got back from it not about an hour and a half ago. It was all right. I mean, it was pretty. It was about as forgettable as it can get. It basically is just a guy broke down middle management guy that down in the dumps. Wife is bleeding him dry with credit card debt and buying this and that. And his boss tells him we're going down to Mexico to pick up a drug or finish out a deal for a pharmaceutical pill that incorporates weed in a way. And but this same company, to keep the cartels away from them, we're kind of feeding them a little bit of that drug money to funnel money into the company, as they were just getting started with this drug deal. Long story short, everything goes awry. He tries to fake a kidnapping, then he actually gets kidnapped, and basically it just had an undertone of who's really getting rich, how evil are the people, how really good are the people who are doing these deals and selling you pills and stuff like that, and then who they actually use to obtain that wealth. It's the you and I's that actually do all the work. They reap all the benefits.
Right.
Things like that, corporate greed, and it's pretty much just drove that point home as much as it could. If I were it's definitely not a theater movie. If you get it on Redbox, Netflix, Hulu, whatever it might end up streaming on, or going by Walgreens and pick it up on Redbox. If I were to review it, I was solid 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10.
Yeah, because it was just as Matthew Stone wrote it, and it's kind of that mixture of dark comedy and but trying to send home some different ideals about
being an Amazon studio movie. How was the production value?
If you didn't know Amazon made it, you would have thought it was just another,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
it was
Well,
pretty
that's
good. Well, they partnered with Styx, so I don't know. It wasn't purely all Amazon. If that makes any sense. So,
Right.
but I think Amazon was they're fronting the bill for it. It was majority of their movie, so it actually might end up on a Fire Stick in the future. So look for it there, on some type of special maybe once you hear the next couple 6, 7 months, and then let's get into the big review of the day, Wrinkle in Time. I'm gonna start with it was a grand movie. Like it was trying to do something big on a big scale, but it kind of it flatlined, and it just kind of stayed flatlined. It didn't it has positives. I'm not saying it was all it was not a terrible movie or anything, but it just wasn't that good and wasn't great or anything. It was trying to fill shoes that were far too big for him. At least that's how I felt about it.
Um, this movie is a great example of mediocrity at its finest. Like it was a mediocre film. Like it was really like white bread. Like it wasn't bad.
Yeah,
It was, but it wasn't.
the bread you feed the ducks.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, it was there. Like, it's disappointing because, the concept, the director behind it, Ava DuVernay, and, being a woman of color directing a major motion picture, I was rooting for her.
Yeah.
I wanted the movie to be great.
We both did. We said it on this podcast.
But, I mean, it was just there. I mean, pretty much
it flatlined from beginning to end. It was like, here's this. It felt like it was constantly setting something up that it never achieved.
Right.
It just, I remember we talked about it on that crime dramas. They build up until they spill over into like this big action sequence. This movie just continued to build up to nothing. At certain points, I was not confused.
I wouldn't say didn't build up to nothing, but it was kind of like, the ending was like, okay.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I guess that's probably the better way to put it. Is I just didn't,
because it definitely built up. It showed the girls gaining a courage that she didn't.
She had her development, yeah,
right. But she was only developed character in the movie.
She's the only one that could develop.
One of my big issues with the movie is it's like everybody else was like a MacGuffin, and if you don't know what a MacGuffin is a plot device. Every other character in the movie except her, and maybe Chris Pine to a small ounce, is a plot device. And I mean, it was cool. Like, it was alright. Like, that's all I can say about the movie. It's alright.
It didn't, like I said, she was the only character left to even get to grow. It was just every other character you met, they've already been developed and established. That who you were watching,
Charles Wallace.
God, that last name is ringing in my brain still. No, it was it's like, plus we didn't like, where is this going? Nothing really felt at risk, honestly. Like, I never actually got the
gravitas of the situation.
I was about to say, I never felt the gravitas of the situation. I didn't, and it never. Which, if you don't care about the actual situation, you start to not care about the characters. You start not to care about the world, and as soon as you get disconnected from the world, it's a done deal. And to me, it feels like almost with these movies, if you have too much to play with, you end up trying to do too much and nothing gets done. Whereas if you don't have a lot to play with, you try a little bit harder with what you have.
Right.
And to kind of put that to where I'm coming from, that is, this was a universe where they could potentially go anywhere in the world. And they can go to any planet, anywhere. Didn't matter. And sometimes that playground is a little too big. It's kind of like a kid who's, sees 40 different slides, but he just keeps going back to the same. Like, it felt familiar. It felt familiar when it shouldn't have.
I understand where you're coming from, but I think the whole point in this movie was more the focus of her finding her father. So that's why they went through so many worlds and then explore it. It's not getting a sequel, but if they have further sequels, I think at that moment they would have explored. You see what I'm saying?
No, I get it. I get you
at
have to build
point,
it. You have to build the world.
Right.
But
because he knows he's more knowledgeable than his daughter, Chris Pine.
Absolutely.
So he could have tapped into stuff in the next movies that.
What do they call it? Whenever I'm just gonna call it warping because that's what it looked like to me. When
they were tesseracting.
Yeah,
they got tesser.
He did it himself. Whenever they were being dragged by Christopher Wallace, he did it. So he has the power. Just
who is under possession?
Yeah, who was under possession. Well, spoiler, but if you see it, if you haven't already seen it, but like I said, the movie felt very confusing at times because it didn't really, not because you didn't understand what was happening, because it just, you didn't know it didn't pick a route and go. It was trying to go, it spread itself too thin. And then some of the writing was, it was, some of it was meant to be cheesy, but that was like getting hit in the face with a rock. It was just like, ooh, that was like specifically
the cringiness didn't really bother me, or cheesy lines, because it's a movie, and this is not. I hate when people do this, but in this case, it's true.
Yeah,
it's a movie marketed towards kids, so I'm not saying it's nothing wrong with the lines so much being kind of cheesy and straight to the nothing super clever.
mm-hmm.
My issue with it was the execution of the lines. Wow.
Yeah.
Some of it was like Charles Wallace. I know he was supposed to be this symbolism of being happy. But I mean, your sister and this guy, y'all in this unknown world, and they're in this storm. You don't know where your sister and her friend is in this dire situation. Hey, guys. It's like he never had a sense of the danger that was taking place.
No, I get it.
He was look, I can understand being optimistic and upbeat. I understand that's the character. There's a difference between optimistic and upbeat and always happy. Homie was always happy, even in dire situations. That's
robotic.
What I'm saying.
He was robotic.
He was almost like a plot device. And her friend, Razzie Awards, holla at me. Because if y'all don't have this dude on there, y'all nullified, bro. Y'all lose.
Homie's a lock-in right now.
If y'all don't have him as a Razzie nomination for worst supporting actor, I mean, dude was terrible.
Yeah, don't take it easy because he's a child. That was not
even
good
for
acting.
A child actor. I know child actors can't sell it sometimes, but man,
this is even from a verbal standpoint. This is gonna sound because it's gonna sound like I'm picking it apart. When he was physically running, the flailing of the arms, I'm like, nobody in this universe that I've ever seen in my entire life runs that way.
I've seen some people.
Ooh.
The point is, he was obviously supposed to be faster than her. Because he's like, keep up. And Stormy Daniels, that's the actress name. Stormy Daniels is like running like the proper way to run.
She looked athletic running.
And he didn't, and he's telling her to catch up. I'm like,
it's a weird nitpick, I know, but that's the kind of stuff that'll, like, if you're in a movie and you see something like that right there will snap you out of it real quick.
And then he was supposed to be the character, a plot device.
A love interest.
She's supposed to be a character to uplift, a potential love interest. In this movie, he was supposed to be the character to uplift her spirits.
Yeah.
But it's like, the whole time, it just came off kind of creepy almost. Like he was
the comments he was
your
making.
Hair is pretty. It smells good.
I'm
looking at y'all. Your hair is pretty.
Deadpan.
It smells
times.
good. Mm-mm. I understand you being awkward, but I can understand. Look. Trust me. Socially awkward, but even to maybe not now, but when I was younger, I definitely was. But even to an extent, like, even when you're kind of in that moment, you're not just that dry and creepy. You might be like, you look pretty. Some type of emotion, like nervousness, like, you look good. But he was simply like, you're pretty. You're beautiful.
Yeah.
You're so sweet. You're amazing. Bruh, like.
And then another thing was, and this isn't just him. I'm going to use him because we're already talking about him. Whenever they were first going into, Charles Wallace got Charles, the little
Charles
kid.
Wallace is his name.
God, Charles was talking about what each of the three brought to the world and how they were going to help out. And Charles Wallace was supposed to be almost like not the brains, but the happy-go-lucky guy.
Yeah.
And then the other character was supposed to be the awkward guy, was supposed to be the diplomat. Be able to talk to anybody. And side note, anytime there was a weird situation, he wasn't helping or contributing in any way. He said nothing. He was really quiet. It just made no sense. He was just really quiet. And then Stormy, obviously she was obviously the leader of the group, but she was the character development, so she was growing into her role. Everyone else was that's what I was talking about. Everyone else was just already in their role.
Yeah.
We're by no means movie experts, but you can't just have that many people and that, all-star cast that it was with Oprah and all that, and nobody have a character development except for one person.
Yeah.
That to me feels like a no.
And kind of Chris Pine.
But even then though,
that's up for your interpretation.
But we were talking about 6-7 characters, and only it's a 1.5. We'll say 1.5 characters have some development. To me, that feels like
because I know the reasoning behind a lot of people be like, well, they were planning a sequel. But even in Harry Potter, hold on, I'm going to use Harry Potter example because that started off as a kid movie and developed
into something else. Yeah,
we can even use Lord of the Rings. We can even use Star Wars. You had because those are all fantasy movies. You had a sense of who these characters are.
Yep.
Even if you didn't know their backstory. You didn't really know about Han, but you had a sense of what type of character he was. You had a sense of who he was. Luke, you had a sense of who he was. You had a sense of who Leia was. Hell, even see-through, even the droids, even the droids. And Chewie, you had a sense of who they was. You got a sense of who Frodo was, Sam was, Gollum was, Aragorn, You had a sense of Gandalf. You had a sense of who these characters were. Harry Potter. You had a sense of Ron, Hermione. This movie, outside of what was her name? I know the actress.
Mindy Kaling?
I know the actress. No, I know the actress name. What was her character in the movie?
Oh, Sweet Home Alabama. That's what you're talking about, right?
No, Stormy Daniels' character in Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, her name? I don't remember her name, to be honest with you.
It was man, it would come to me, but even the universe ambassadors, so to speak, that's what they were, almost like ambassadors of the universe. I know they weren't supposed to have like serious character development because they're kind of like the Obi-Wan mentoring figure or Gandalf man, but even then they were so, outside of Reese Witherspoon, they were so bland. Like Oprah was the character to teach you things.
Yeah.
Okay, you can be the character to teach somebody, the mentoring, but still have a little personality outside of remember the lessons you've learned. And then Mindy Kaling was just, her character literally did this. It worked, but it agitated me. Because to me, it was lazy writing. She executed it good.
She talked in quotes.
She talked in quotes.
That's what she's talking about.
She talked in quotes.
Very famous quotes, like quoting Gandhi.
And she would say to person. It worked in some occasions. Some occasions, I'm like, all right, man. Because I think my issue with that was this. It's Mindy Kaling, who has one of the most charming, loving personalities in Hollywood. And you pick her to play that type of character?
You underutilized her. She
should have been the Reese Witherspoon character. And Reese Witherspoon should have been her character.
Oh, yeah. That would have been a perfect little swap there.
And Reese Witherspoon did good for what she was given. She did.
Oh, yeah.
She did good.
It wasn't, like I said, we're not saying the movie was terrible. It was just...
It's disappointing because it could have been so much better.
Like I said,
if it was trash, I would have just dragged it.
Yeah.
The reason I'm critiquing it like this is because the movie, and I'm going to let Nadal have the floor after this.
Yeah.
Because the movie could have been, it was like when I went and saw Cloud Atlas. That's what I told Nadal and our friend. It was like when I saw Cloud Atlas. It was a movie with so much promise, and the premise and the concept was so interesting. And the execution was like, dang.
What happened?
If it was trash, I would just drag it, laugh. Let's move on to the next topic. But the reason I'm critiquing such a mediocre, decent movie is because it could have been so much better. But
I mean, I have the exact same sentiment as you. What I said at the top of the review for it was, it had this big grand scheme going into it. It's like, man, you guys ready for this ride? And then it flatlined. It died. It was dead on impact. It died. And I don't, stuff like that, it seems weird to ask a question, but I always go like, what happened? What? I always wonder, like, at a certain point, are they just like, well, we've already invested the money, the date's set, we got to come out with it now. You know what I mean? What goes on that they're, I feel like you kind of have to know what you have at least halfway through the production. At least halfway through. But, like I said, I mean, there's certain business things that we're never going to be privy to. But that's just... I mean, I agree with you. There's not much to add onto it. Let's see. I think we're good on time, but I think we got about a solid 5, 7 minutes. Well, what else? Well, you said you had a little tidbit, so lay it on us.
I want to discuss.
Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. Just right to interrupt you. Theaters, wait for it. Put a number on it. Slap a number.
Oh,
on
Wrinkle
it.
in Time.
Yeah.
Actually, I give it the same rating I gave to Strangers. 6.3 out of 10.
6.
Maybe
6.1. 6.1. I was gonna go 6.0. It's a solid 6 right there.
And if you are going to watch this movie, watch it in a big screen,
Yeah.
because he said some of the CGI but he's right. Some of the CGI was shaky, but Black Panther has some shaky CGI. It's still a very, very good movie. This ain't very good, but the cinematography in parts, that's what I was gonna say.
They shot New Zealand, and some of that landscape was not even CG. It was just a landscape.
It was beautiful, bro.
So it's the cinematography was good, which, by the way, I've noticed has been a trend recently. Even the movies that aren't great, the cinematography has still been pretty good. So that's a plus.
So what we're trying to say is, it's still ultimately
check it out in IMAX.
Ava's fault because she's the director.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to blame. That's another.
You get all the glory, but you also get all the blame.
I'm not going. That's another,
like a quarterback.
That's another topic for another day. But I will say this. I think the writer of the movie, name was Jennifer Lee. She has wrote better stuff, because I think she helped Ava write Selma. But this wasn't it. Sorry.
It flatlined. Flatline is the best way to describe it. Was a flatline.
But yeah, moving on.
Moving on. Yeah, 6. Go check it out in theaters on IMAX on the big screen. 6.1, 6.0. Let's get right into. Let's lay that tidbit on us.
I want to discuss something that's very important that a lot of the film community don't discuss. Rotten Tomatoes. My thing is, a lot of people don't understand how Rotten Tomatoes work. It's very misleading, and they play into it. Here's how Rotten Tomatoes work.
Stupid on purpose.
Rotten Tomatoes have a lot of y'all gas who's not true, and I'm not going to say true, but diehard moviegoers, and it's okay. It's okay. Just like a lot of basketball fans really don't know the point of a triple-double is. So it's cool. I'm not dragging nobody for that. But here's where they gas people. Sometimes you'll see a movie and it says 98 on Rotten Tomatoes. That's not basing it on the quality of the film. That 98 is a cumulative score of positive reviews.
Mm-hmm.
If you read the actual reviews, the movie critics actually give their actual score.
By simply scrolling down.
Yes. If you go to the desktop page, they have the actual score. And then the cumulative review. A lot of people, because one of my coworkers, he was like, man, the Black Panther and Get Out is rated higher than The Godfather. Bruh, calm, chill. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He really thought, look, those movies, I will watch them over The Godfather, but they're not better than The Godfather. And if you read the actual reviews for The Godfather, all of them are 90s across the board, except these two idiots. That's how you don't like The Godfather. Buffoons. Like, who doesn't like The Godfather? Even if you're not into mafia movies, I mean, that's
People Not From Earth.
That's just a great film. But the overall scores is all 90s. Black Panther, the average score was 7.9.
It was a C+ movie, guys.
Or 8 when they review the critic score. So it's very misleading.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying on that one.
It's Metacritic is what also killed Metacritic, by the way, guys. The same thing that's happening with Rotten Tomatoes is what killed Metacritic. For the longest time, and I'll use video games as an example because that's more my wheelhouse on there, but Metacritic died when it came to video game reviews, because here's the deal. Whenever they do an accumulative that score that's bringing all the different reviews, because people aren't reviewing things on Rotten Tomatoes and the critics are submitting it to them. They're going to Screen Rant. They're going to so-and-so website. Okay, they gave it a 5 out of 5. Everyone rates on a different scale.
Right.
Some people are 5 out of 5. Some people are 2 out of 3. Some people are, the 10 out of 10s. Everyone's a different scale. So no one's actually sitting there breaking down that math. It's a computer program that's doing the best possible salute. Like, how do I what does a 2.3 or 2 out of 3 mean compared to a 9 out of 10? How are they similar?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? I think you can explain how it's similar, but how do you explain that to a computer program? And then you end up getting these inflated or deflated scores based off one bad review because they did a random review on the 15th page of Google search, had a review of 1 out of 2 because they only use a 2-star scale. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's how it works. It's a average score of everything on the internet that as soon as it hits upload, the computer dings it and okay, add it to the overall score.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, you have a lot of people 10 out of 10, but someone else is 4 out of, literally a 5 out of 5, like you can have 15 10 out of 10s in a row. One 5 out of 5, which is technically the exact same score as a 10 out of 10, it'll drop it.
Yeah.
It won't raise it, it'll drop
it.
Yeah. It's that's not the critic's fault or anything. It's just a bug. Not even a bug. It's just a default to that
default
of the website of the system. It's just it's
default of the system.
It's not even a bug. It's just something. There's no workaround for it yet. But Rotten Tomatoes likes to play into that a lot, and you have to understand that Rotten Tomatoes, a lot of their stock is owned by production companies.
Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers owns like a majority share, right?
Mm-hmm.
And man, I mean, do that with what do what that piece of information, but it's hard not to sit back and go, maybe they are kind of skewing things and not fixing a problem that's on their website. It's Rotten Tomatoes has been very smart about doing press tours and stuff and getting in good with critics and stuff. That's their answer to not become the next Metacritic and die. Is to basically become a household name. Everyone, oh, what's the Rotten Tomatoes score? And it doesn't really.
And I think because of the popularity of Rotten Tomatoes,
exactly,
now,
that's what makes it survive.
I think it's making these critics lazy as well, because they're not trying to actually review these. They're just putting enough out to have a rotten and fresh. I'll give you a great example. Marvel movies, DC movies. Are Marvel movies better than the DC movies? Yes, we can all agree on that. But do they ding, when I read the reviews, do they ding the Warner Brother movies on things they don't ding the MCU movies? Absolutely. Some of the stuff they were dinging Wonder Woman on, I was like,
they ignored in Black Panther.
Not Black Panther.
I'm sorry, Justice League. I was
not Black Panther. Thor Ragnarok.
Thor Ragnarok too. Yeah.
Like, I mean, some of that they was talking about the cinematography and Wonder Woman is shaky at times. Thor Ragnarok. Sometimes, bro, it looked like a set. It looked like a set, dude.
Yeah, it's. I'll use Black Panther and Justice League because remember now Justice League's CG was not good by any means, but it was just really bad. Black Panthers wasn't really bad, but it by no means was excellent CG. Like I think we talked about it in the podcast, the waterfall scene when they were first fighting.
Yeah, that looked like a paper mache.
But that's what I'm saying though. But like that's a big budget movie and that's a big event movie.
But I think the movie was so good, which it was. It was. But
that's what I'm.
Three times better than Justice League.
This is specifically to your point, though. They picked apart the CG in Justice League.
I see what you're saying.
But you never heard a review.
But the CG in Justice League was bad.
But that's my point. Though.
But I see what you're saying.
This was a big moment in the movie.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
The bottom half was good. Everything above that was not good. And as a reviewer, I feel like I'm not saying your whole review is based off that one little snippet. But it was never even. It was like it didn't happen. They lifted the rug and swept it under.
I like everything you're saying is true. I just think Black Panther is a bad example because it is a very good movie.
But I'm not. That's what I'm saying. I'm talking about if you were to review, like I'm trying to get the.
I would have used like Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah, Thor: The Dark World. Yeah. But it's just. If you're going to review a movie, review it on its merits. And one of the things that you should... what would you say are the pillars of a movie review? Or the pillars to making a movie that it should technically be reviewed on?
Acting, writing,
Okay.
direction,
Okay.
and look,
And look.
aesthetic.
Okay. We have a lot of people reviewing movies based on the message that was being delivered in the movie rather
That's a
than the
problem
actual
too.
movie.
That's a problem too.
And that's the point I'm trying to get to. The CG would fall under that directing it. Like, how is that happening? How is that not tighter? Why is this is a big moment in the movie? I can understand if a little bit here and there was off a little bit. A tire wheel looked a little weird as it was passing by. This was the camera, the big swooping shot, and it looks bad.
T'Challa fighting for his kingsmanship.
And it's a big swooping shot of this big, beautiful land of Wakanda, and then your eye just goes, "Ooh, what happened?"
You remember what I said? I said it looked like the little slave dolls from Tales from the Hood. So
yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things where review a movie for its merits and what it's supposed to be reviewed on. I get, and if you're in review, if you want to mention the message, absolutely go for it. I'm not saying exclude it, but don't let that sway whether the movie is good or bad.
I'm gonna give you a great example of that. We're not saying a message can't uplift a movie experience, but you have to judge a movie on its merits as well. I give you a great example. The Post had a good message, but it was well directed, well acted, which drove the message home even more.
Yeah,
because it was a good movie.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying? Like, it was a good movie, so it drove the message home even more. Get Out. It was a very good, well-made film, so it drove the message home even more. Mm-hmm. A lot of these critics with Wrinkle in Time, they want to protect it because it's a message of love and
positivity and all that, and fighting for what you believe in, and coming out of your shell to show who you really are. And we get it. Every movie's gonna have a message, no matter what. That'll never stop happening. But as a reviewer, you have a duty to make sure that people are getting the truth and not a skewed opinion of a movie. Because we do live in a world where people, if they read a really good review, whether they like the movie or not, they'll go and watch it and still say it was great, just because they read a review where they said it was great.
Or they'll convince themselves if it was bad, if it's getting trashed.
Exactly, they'll lie to themselves until they believe it, like an individual that we know. But it's you have to understand the power that you wield, and I think they do, and that might be part of the problem. They might actually understand the power that they wield as a reviewer.
And then everything, because we're living in a culture now where everything is an agenda, for better and for worse.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to say leave politics out of cinema, because some of the best movies have serious political and social messages. But what I am going to say is, don't allow that to sway the merits of a movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like John Wick. People dragging Death Wish for... Let me give y'all an example. There were movie critics dragging Death Wish for its gun violence and its pro-gun, aesthetic.
Yeah.
But y'all love John Wick?
Where he literally goes and they call it a wine tasting, but it's really to buy guns and knives and bombs.
Y'all love John Wick, who's literally is a gun fest from beginning to end.
An awesome gun fest.
It's hypocritical.
Yeah. Just
because now in this social climate, John Wick, the first John Wick came out in a time where it was this wasn't happening. That's another problem I have with a lot of these critics. They're trendy. They're trendy. If this same critic was calling out Death Wish like he was calling out John Wick, I'd be like, well, that's who he is.
That's the
point. I disagree with him, but I can feel where he comes. I can feel him as a critic. Because my favorite critics, because I like to read movie. I'm a movie head, so my favorite critics, I disagree with them like 60% of the time, but they stay true to who they are. A lot of these critics are trendy. Yeah,
that's true. And I mean, we're about to cut it off here in a little bit. It ran a little long, but I think we needed to just to kind of get that message out there and state our opinion on it to all the world out there. But we don't mind you reviewing something with your own opinion. Never stop doing that. But also understand that you need to review things you need to go in 50-50. You know what I mean? You can't let your opinion on gun violence sway the result of a movie review because a movie might be good, and it's review it for being good or bad. That's all I'm asking. I feel like that's it. It's easy to say that, but it's one of those things where you just address the actual merits of the movie and move on.
Right.
And then at the last paragraph, add in what you want to talk about, the message. Don't let the message be your review. That's not what you're reviewing.
Right.
You didn't walk in that theater to review a positive message. You walked in there to find out acting was good, writing was good, directing was good, etc. So on and so forth as you go down the list. Anything you wanted to add before we left off today?
That's it.
Well, I mean, that was this week's episode. Be uploaded later today on YouTube, which you can find down there in the link on the Twitch page. We should have uploaded next hour or so. I'm Nadal.
Jamal.
And that was this week's episode. Peace.